A woman finds a secret door in her new home. What she discovers inside will change her life forever. Maya thought she had found the perfect home, a fresh start with the man she loved. But when she stumbles upon a hidden door, she unlocks a secret that will change everything she thought she knew about her new house and herself. What lies beyond the door, and why was it hidden for so long? Before we begin, tell us in the comments, would you open a secret door if you found one in your home? And if you love mysterious stories, don't forget to like this video to support the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Maya had never believed in the supernatural. She wasn't the type to get caught up in old ghost stories or urban legends. She preferred the tangible, the practical. That's why when she and her fiancé Ben found their dream house in the quiet town of Crestwood, she felt like everything was finally falling into place. The house was old, charming, and full of character. It needed some work, sure, but it was a perfect fixer-upper, a place they could call home for the rest of their lives. The first few weeks went by in a blur of moving boxes, painting, and setting up furniture. The house, though dusty and worn, quickly began to feel like theirs. Maya spent her days unpacking, while Ben worked on repairs. She loved the charm of the place, the creaky wooden floors, the high ceilings, and the large windows that filled the rooms with natural light. It had everything they wanted. But there was one thing about the house that didn't sit right with her. It was something small, almost insignificant, but it nagged at her every time she passed it. A narrow hallway on the second floor had always felt oddly cold, even when the rest of the house was warm. At the end of the hallway was a door, one that Maya had never really thought much of at first. It was hidden behind an old bookshelf, almost as though it didn't belong. But the more she looked at it, the more it bothered her. It seemed to blend into the wall, making it easy to overlook. One afternoon, as Maya moved a few bookshelves around, she noticed the door again. The idea of it being hidden, unseen by most of the people who had lived there before them, piqued her curiosity. She moved the shelf aside and took a closer look. It wasn't just a door, it was an old wooden door, worn and warped by time. There was no handle, no visible lock, just a strange, faded pattern carved into the wood. It almost looked like a symbol, but one Maya couldn't recognize. She felt a shiver run down her spine. The air around the door felt colder than the rest of the room, and it almost seemed to draw her in, urging her to open it. She didn't know why, but her hand instinctively reached out toward it. Just as her fingers brushed the door, she heard Ben's voice calling from downstairs, snapping her out of her trance. "Maya, are you coming? We need to finish the painting in the living room." Reluctantly, Maya pulled her hand away from the door. For a moment, she stood there, staring at it, feeling an odd pull. She couldn't explain it, but something about that door felt important. Something about it felt like it was meant to be discovered. But Maya shook the thought away. She had other things to focus on, other parts of the house that needed attention. The next few days passed without incident. Maya kept busy with the renovations, but the door continued to sit in the back of her mind. It was always there, lurking, like an unanswered question she couldn't shake. She would glance at it every time she passed through the hallway, her curiosity building. Finally, one evening after dinner, as Ben was cleaning up the kitchen, Maya found herself standing in front of the door again. Her heart raced a little as she reached for the handle, wondering what she would find behind it. She had no reason to feel afraid. This was her home after all. But there was a sense of something hidden, something old and forgotten behind that door. She took a deep breath and twisted the knob. The door opened with a soft creak, revealing a small room behind it. It was dark inside, the air damp and musty. Maya stepped inside, feeling a chill in the air that she hadn't noticed before. The room was small, barely big enough for a single person to stand in. There was a low ceiling and stone walls, making it feel like a tiny underground chamber rather than a room in her house. The room was empty, except for a few strange items scattered across the floor. Old papers, a faded photograph, and what looked like a small wooden box. The photograph was the first thing that caught Maya's eye. She knelt down to pick it up, brushing off the dust. The photo was black and white, showing a group of people standing in front of a house that looked remarkably similar to the one she had just bought. But what was even stranger was the expression on their faces. The people in the photo were smiling, but there was something unnerving about their eyes. Something dark, almost as though they were hiding a secret. Maya stared at the picture, feeling a sense of discomfort creep up her spine. She couldn't explain why, but it felt like a warning. She stood up, her eyes scanning the room. She noticed the wooden box next, its surface covered in dust. She reached down and opened it carefully. Inside, there was a small bundle of yellowed letters, tied together with a faded ribbon. Without thinking, Maya picked up the letters and untied the ribbon, unfolding the top one. The letter was written in neat, cursive handwriting. It read, "To whoever finds this, know that what lies beneath this house is not just the foundation, it is the key to everything. The past cannot be undone, and neither can the mistakes we made. If you are reading this, it is because the door has opened for you. Do not ignore what you find here. The truth is waiting. But beware, for the truth comes with a price." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She looked around the room, feeling the weight of the letter's words settle over her. What did it mean? What had been hidden here all these years? And why did she feel like she had just uncovered something she wasn't supposed to? Suddenly, she heard Ben's voice calling from downstairs again, this time louder, more urgent. "Maya, are you okay up there?" Maya quickly shoved the letter back into the box and shut it. She turned toward the door, but before she could step out, she glanced back at the room. Something about it felt wrong, like it was a place that didn't belong, a place that had been left untouched for a reason. She closed the door behind her, locking it in place once more. But the image of the room, the letters, and the strange photograph stayed with her as she made her way back downstairs. The next few days were a whirlwind of confusion and unease for Maya. She couldn't stop thinking about the hidden room, the letter, and the photograph she had found. The words in the letter kept echoing in her mind. The truth is waiting. But beware, for the truth comes with a price. What did it mean? What was the truth she was supposed to find, and why did it feel like something was pulling her toward it? At first, she tried to ignore it. She and Ben had moved in with such excitement, and the last thing she wanted was to dive into something that might ruin their perfect new life. But the more she tried to forget about the room, the more she felt like it was calling to her. It was as if the house had secrets, deep ones, and they wouldn't let her go until she uncovered them. Ben had noticed the change in her. He saw how her energy had shifted from eager to apprehensive, and he could tell something was bothering her. But every time he asked, Maya dismissed it, telling him that the house was just a bit overwhelming, that the repairs were more work than she had anticipated. It wasn't until that Saturday afternoon, a week after she first discovered the door, that Maya finally couldn't take it any longer. She had to go back to that room. She had to figure out what was hidden behind the walls of their new home. There was a burning curiosity in her, one that she couldn't ignore anymore. The truth was something she had to understand, no matter what the price might be. Maya waited until Ben went out to run errands. Then she took the key she had found for the hidden room from the kitchen drawer, where she had hidden it. Her heart raced as she made her way upstairs. She stood in front of the door, staring at the old wood. For a moment, she hesitated. What if she was making a mistake? What if the house was meant to be left alone, its history too dangerous to uncover? But deep down, she knew that she couldn't leave the past hidden anymore. She wasn't the type of person to leave things unsolved. With trembling hands, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air inside the room was thick and stale, the mustiness hanging in the corners like an unwanted guest. Maya could feel her breath quicken as she looked around. The room hadn't changed since her last visit. Still dark, still shrouded in mystery. But now, she wasn't just an observer. She had crossed a line. She had opened the door. And now she was fully committed to whatever this was. She had no idea what she was looking for, but she knew that she would find it. She walked over to the small table, where the box with the letters had been. Her hands shook as she picked it up again, opening it more carefully this time. She needed to read all the letters, not just the ones she had hastily shoved back in. This wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about answers. The first letter was dated several years ago, and it was addressed to someone named Margaret. The handwriting was neat, professional, but the contents of the letter left Maya with more questions than she could handle. It was from someone named LH, a name she didn't recognize. The letter was short, but it carried an unmistakable weight. Margaret, I know you've been asking questions about the house. The truth about the history of this place is not something you're ready for. But I feel I owe you the full story, even if it costs me my life to tell it. They are watching us, but there's nothing I can do now. I've done all I can to keep you safe. The door is locked for a reason, and I hope you'll never need to open it. If you do, you'll find the answers, but you will also find the curse that has followed this house for generations. I wish you hadn't come back. But now that you have, you're in this as much as I am. LH Maya felt her heart race as she finished the letter. The mention of a curse, of things hidden, of people watching, everything felt like pieces of a larger puzzle she had never even known existed. What was going on with this house? What did Margaret have to do with it? And who was LH? She flipped through the rest of the letters, but they were all similar in tone. Warnings, cryptic messages, and pleas for secrecy. There was nothing concrete, nothing that made sense, just a series of vague references to them and the curse. Maya was about to close the box when a small, folded piece of paper slipped out from between the pages. She unfolded it, feeling the weight of the moment pressed down on her. It was a drawing, roughly sketched, but detailed enough to make out the shape of the house. In the center of the drawing was a strange symbol, almost like an ancient rune, but it wasn't anything Maya had ever seen before. At the bottom of the page, in tiny, hurried letters, were the words, "The key lies beneath the foundation. Find it before they do." Maya felt a chill sweep over her, as if the very air in the room had shifted. She stood frozen, staring at the drawing. Beneath the foundation? Was there something buried here? Something hidden beneath the floorboards of the house she had just bought? What had she gotten herself into? Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The door downstairs opened. Ben was home. Panic surged through Maya. She quickly stuffed the drawing back into the box and shut it, locking the door behind her. She rushed down the stairs and out into the living room, trying to regain some semblance of normalcy. Ben was carrying groceries, smiling at her like he hadn't noticed anything was wrong. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, setting the bags down on the kitchen counter. Maya nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just got caught up in some unpacking. How was your trip?" Ben didn't seem to notice anything amiss. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed. There was something she had uncovered, something she wasn't ready for. The house had secrets, dark secrets, and now the past was beginning to catch up with her. The following days felt like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Maya couldn't escape the feeling that the house was alive, that it had a history it was holding tight, waiting for her to unravel. Every room seemed to whisper secrets to her, and the strange sense of unease that had settled in her stomach after the discovery of the letters only grew stronger. The drawing, the one that had slipped out of the box, kept haunting her thoughts. The key lies beneath the foundation. Find it before they do. What did it mean? And who were they? She couldn't shake the sense that she was being watched, as though there was a force at work that didn't want her to uncover what had been buried beneath the house. Ben noticed the change in her. He saw the distracted look in her eyes, the way her smile seemed more forced, how her steps were slower as she moved around their home. "You've been quiet lately," he said one evening, as they sat in the living room together. "Everything okay?" Maya hesitated, unsure of how to explain the turmoil in her mind. How could she tell him that she thought the house they had just moved into was hiding something? That there was a dark force lurking just below the surface? She had never been one to believe in ghost stories or curses, but everything about this house felt wrong, like it was alive in a way she couldn't explain. "I've just been thinking," Maya said finally, her voice soft. "About the house. I think I might have found something in the attic. Maybe it's nothing, but I'm just trying to figure it out. Ben raised an eyebrow. The attic? What did you find? Maya bit her lip, unsure whether to tell him the truth. He had always been practical, down to earth, and she didn't want to sound crazy. It's hard to explain, she said, deciding to keep the details vague. Just some old things, nothing too weird. Ben seemed to accept that, but Maya could see the concern in his eyes. If it's bothering you, maybe we should hire someone to take a look at the house. Get a professional opinion. We don't know what's been hidden here. Maya nodded, grateful for his suggestion. But deep down, she knew that finding answers wasn't going to be that simple. It was up to her to figure it out. The letter, the photograph, the symbol, these were all clues, and they pointed to something buried beneath the house. Whatever it was calling her to find it. That night, as Ben fell asleep beside her, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning. She needed to go back to the secret room. She needed to find the key, whatever it was, and discover what was hidden beneath the foundation. But a part of her was terrified. What if there were things in that house better left undiscovered? Despite the fear clawing at her insides, Maya knew she had no choice. The house had already shown her too much, and if she didn't take action, she would be forever haunted by the unanswered questions. The next morning, when Ben went out for his morning jog, Maya seized the opportunity. She quietly slipped upstairs, past the hallway where the hidden door stood. Her heart pounded as she reached the door again, feeling the familiar coldness that had haunted her. The key was still in her pocket, the weight of it heavy with anticipation. She unlocked the door once more, stepping inside the small, musty room. The air felt colder than it had before, like it was holding its breath. Maya knew she was running out of time. If she didn't act now, whatever lay hidden beneath the house would remain buried, and she would never know the truth. She made her way to the back of the room, where the floorboards were slightly raised. She had noticed them before, but now, with a sense of purpose, she knelt down and gently pried one of the boards up. It came loose easily, revealing a small, dark space underneath. Maya's pulse raced as she peered inside. There, in the darkness, was a small metal box, its surface tarnished by time. Her hands shook as she reached in and pulled it out. The box was heavier than it looked, its edges sharp and worn. Maya ran her fingers over the surface, feeling the intricate carvings, symbols, much like the one in the photograph. They were faint, but still visible enough to make out. She felt a chill pass through her as she traced them, wondering what they meant. She set the box on the floor and slowly opened it. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, was a small, old journal. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she unfolded it, its pages yellowed with age. She could feel the weight of the journal's history in her hands. The handwriting was old-fashioned, the ink smudged in places, but still legible. The first page read, "To the one who dares to read this, know that you are not the first to seek what lies beneath. The truth comes with great cost. This house has been a place of secrets, a place of dark power that has existed for generations. The key you seek is not just a physical object. It is a part of you, something you must sacrifice in order to unlock the true power that lies beneath the foundation." Maya felt a cold sweat break out across her forehead. The words were cryptic, but the meaning was clear. Something was buried beneath the house, something powerful and dangerous. And it wasn't just a matter of finding it, it was a matter of giving up something to uncover it. The next pages of the journal detailed strange rituals, cryptic references to the Watchers, and warnings about a force that had been contained beneath the house for generations. The more Maya read, the more she felt a sense of dread creep over her. The journal's author seemed to have tried to keep this dark power hidden, but now it was clear. Whatever had been buried here had begun to stir again. As Maya continued to read, the final line of the journal caught her eye. "You must decide, Maya. You have found the door, but now you must choose. Will you unlock it? Will you pay the price? Or will you leave the past buried and live with the consequences of knowing the truth? The door, the truth. The price." Maya's hands trembled as she closed the journal. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Whatever was buried here, it wasn't just a relic of the past. It was alive, and it was waiting for her to make a choice. Maya sat frozen, the journal in her hands, her mind racing with fear and disbelief. The words on the pages were heavy, suffocating, and the weight of the decision she had just been handed pressed down on her chest. "You must decide," she repeated in her mind. "Will you unlock it? Will you pay the price?" The question haunted her, echoing in the silence of the room. For a moment she wondered if she had imagined it all, if the strange symbols, the cryptic journal, and the warnings were just a figment of her overactive imagination. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The house had secrets, and she had uncovered them. The door she had opened wasn't just a door to a room. It was a door to something far older, far more dangerous than she could ever have anticipated. She closed the journal with trembling hands, the reality of her situation settling in. She could hear the sounds of the house around her, the creaks of the floorboards, the soft hum of the wind outside, but it felt like everything had grown quieter, as though the house itself was waiting for her to make a choice. Her heart raced as she glanced over at the door she had unlocked. The room behind it felt like a barrier between the ordinary world and whatever dark force was lurking beneath it. She could feel it now, something ancient, something powerful, just beyond her reach. But she wasn't ready to give in to fear. Not yet. Maya stood up and walked to the small window, the sunlight filtering through the trees outside. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, taking in the normalcy of the world beyond the house. It felt so far removed from the darkness she had just uncovered. But then the thought crept into her mind. If I walk away now, will I ever be able to forget? Will I always wonder what could have been? What if the price is something I can live with? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside the room. Ben. He had come home earlier than expected. She had to make a decision before he found out what was really going on. Maya didn't know what to say to him, how to explain the growing terror she felt, the pull of the house that was drawing her in. But she knew one thing. Ben couldn't know everything. He wouldn't understand. Quickly, she shoved the journal back into the box and locked the room again. She could feel her heart racing as she hurried downstairs to meet him, but her mind kept racing back to the journal, to the words on the page, to the price she would have to pay if she chose to uncover the truth. Ben was waiting in the kitchen when Maya arrived. He was standing at the counter, unpacking groceries, looking completely unaware of the turmoil running through her veins. "Hey," he said, offering her a smile. "You okay? You look a little off." Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired, I guess." Ben studied her for a moment, his brow furrowing. He was always good at picking up on her moods, and she could see that he wasn't entirely convinced, but he didn't push further. "Do you want to take a break from the house for a while? Maybe go for a walk? Clear our heads?" Maya hesitated. A walk would be nice. It might help her think, to get away from the suffocating atmosphere of the house for a little while. But she knew that no matter how far she went, the decision would still be waiting for her. She couldn't run from it. Not anymore. "I think I need to stay here," she said quietly. "I have some things to think about." Ben nodded, a little surprised by her sudden shift in mood, but he didn't press her. "Okay, I'll be in the living room, watching TV if you need me." As he walked out of the kitchen, Maya felt the familiar weight of solitude settle over her. She was alone again. The house was silent, except for the faint creak of the floorboards beneath her feet. The room felt colder now, darker, and the air seemed heavier. The decision she had to make was no longer a choice. It was a compulsion, a force that she couldn't escape. Maya walked to the door of the room again. Her hand hovered over the handle, but she didn't open it. The journal's warning rang in her ears, louder than before. The truth was buried beneath the house, but it wasn't something she could take lightly. There were risks, real, dangerous risks. But if she didn't find out what was down there, would she always be haunted by the unknown? With a deep breath, she pushed the door open again, stepping inside. The room still felt cold, but now it felt different, like something was waiting. She walked to the center of the room, where the floorboard had been lifted earlier. The box was still there, untouched. She crouched down and picked it up once more, her fingers brushing over the carvings. Maya's pulse quickened as she opened the box again, this time with a new sense of purpose. The journal was still inside. She pulled it out and flipped through the pages, scanning for anything she might have missed. But it was the last page that caught her attention again. The one with the final warning. You must decide. Will you unlock it? Will you pay the price? She couldn't ignore it any longer. The truth was waiting. It had always been waiting, buried beneath the foundation of the house, hidden for generations. The house wasn't just a home. It was a prison. A place where secrets festered, where the past had been locked away, and now Maya had the key. Her hand hovered over the journal as she prepared to make the decision. She didn't know what would happen if she continued down this path, but she was no longer afraid. She had to know. As she closed the journal and stood up, she knew what she had to do. She wasn't going to back away. She wasn't going to leave it all buried. The truth was calling her, and she was going to answer. Maya walked to the center of the room, where the strange symbol on the floor seemed to pulse with an unseen energy. She knelt down, brushing her fingers over it. With the last piece of her resolve in place, she whispered aloud, "I'm ready." Maya stood in the center of the room, her hand resting on the strange symbol carved into the floor. She felt a growing energy beneath her fingers, a pulse that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards and into her bones. Her breath quickened as the realization hit her. She had crossed a line. Whatever was hidden in this house, whatever had been buried beneath the foundation for so long, was waking up. She had no way of knowing what would happen next, but the sensation in the air was undeniable. It was as if the house itself had been holding its breath, waiting for someone to awaken it, and now that moment had come. For a long time, Maya had ignored the nagging feeling in the back of her mind, the sense that something was wrong with the house. The cold spots, the odd dreams, the whispers in the walls. She had brushed it all aside, convinced that it was just her imagination, the product of her overactive mind. But now, standing in the room with the symbol on the floor, she realized that her intuition had been right all along. This was no coincidence. This was something ancient, something far beyond her understanding. The journal had warned her about the price. But what exactly was that price? The letter, the photographs, the cryptic messages, they had all led to this moment, and now there was no turning back. Maya took a deep breath and stepped back from the symbol, her eyes scanning the room for any other signs of movement. The walls seemed to hum, the air thick with energy, and for a moment, everything went still. The silence was suffocating. It felt like the room itself was waiting for her to make the next move. Without thinking, she kneeled down and began to carefully pry up the loose floorboards near the center of the room. Her hands trembled as she worked, the wood creaking under her touch. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat louder than the last. What was she about to uncover? What had been hidden here, locked away for so long? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the floorboards came loose. Beneath it was a small compartment, just big enough to hold something important. Maya felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she looked at the space. She had found it. She reached inside, her fingers brushing against something smooth, something cool to the touch. She pulled it out slowly, the object heavy in her hands. It was a key, an ancient key, its surface worn by time. The metal was tarnished, its intricate designs almost completely worn away. Maya's fingers traced the shape of the key, but as she held it, she realized that it wasn't just a physical object. It was a part of the house, a part of the history that had been buried for so long. The key wasn't just for a door, it was for something much more significant, something tied to the heart of this place. A sudden crash echoed through the house, and Maya jumped, the key slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. The silence that had filled the room was now replaced with a deafening noise. A rumble from deep within the house, like the sound of something shifting, waking, coming to life. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she turned toward the door. It was as if the house itself had been asleep, waiting for the key to unlock its secrets. Now that it had been found, it was awakening, and so was everything that had been hidden. The rumbling grew louder, and the walls seemed to vibrate. Maya backed away, her heart racing. She had come too far to turn back now, but this felt like something far beyond her control. The house began to groan, the wooden beams creaking as if they were straining against something deep within. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the air thickened with the scent of earth and decay. Maya could feel the ground beneath her feet shifting, as though the foundation of the house was being disturbed from beneath. A sudden sharp crack rang out, and Maya spun around to see the door at the far end of the room burst open. The hallway outside was dark, but she could see a faint light flickering in the distance. It was as though something was calling her, something that wanted her to come closer. Without thinking, Maya rushed toward the door, her instincts pushing her forward. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew she had to move, had to follow whatever force was guiding her. She ran down the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence, until she reached the staircase that led to the basement. The light flickered at the bottom, and as Maya descended the stairs, the air grew colder. At the bottom of the stairs, she found another door, a heavy, iron door, unlike anything she had seen before. It was old, rusted, and covered in strange symbols. The key she had found earlier felt heavier in her pocket, as though it was pulsing with an energy of its own, waiting to be used. Maya's hand trembled as she took the key from her pocket and inserted it into the lock. The door creaked open slowly, and the light inside flickered violently as though reacting to her presence. She stepped into the room beyond. It was unlike anything she could have imagined. The room was vast, its walls lined with shelves filled with ancient books, artifacts, and strange objects she couldn't even begin to identify. The air was thick with the scent of dust and something else, something that felt ancient, as though this room had been untouched for centuries. And at the center of the room, glowing softly in the dim light, was a stone pedestal. On the pedestal rested a small, ornate box, just like the one from the secret room. Maya's heart raced as she approached it, knowing that this was the final step, the moment she had been drawn toward all along. She reached out and lifted the box, feeling a rush of energy surge through her as she touched it. The box was heavy, impossibly so, and as she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a small, glimmering crystal, its surface smooth and translucent, as though it held the secrets of the house, of the past, of everything that had been hidden beneath the foundation. The moment her fingers brushed against the crystal, the room seemed to shift. The walls began to tremble, and Maya could feel a presence, a powerful force, fill the air around her. She was no longer alone. If you like this story, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. And if you enjoy stories that embraces your heart, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Let me know in the comments what stood out to you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.